For everyone, thank you for coming in online. We are Remax Wealth Builders Real Estate. We work with Truman Homes, and we want to tell you why we've been investing in Calgary and all the great things that we see in the market coming there. So, for those that don't know who I am, my name is Alex Wilson, owner and broker record at Remax Wealth Builders Real Estate. Been selling real estate in Toronto for over 12 years. Number one Remax agent in Canada for transactions 2022. And I'm actually number 11 in the world. I got a no mistake there. I got to correct that. So number 11 Remax agent worldwide, individual 2022, inducted into the Remax World Hall of Fame, awarded the Remax Lifetime Achievement Award at 35, awarded the Remax Circle of Legends Award at 40. But none of that is relevant. What I really want to talk to you about is investing. And personally, I've turned a $39,300 deposit into a $17 million real estate portfolio, which includes 15 condos, a High Park triplex, and an apartment building in Hamilton. And I've been focused since 2019 on investing in Calgary. There we go. We get Kyle, Niesh, and Ramin. They are now able to share their videos. Just had to upgrade their status to co-hosts. So thanks for everyone for coming in. So this is who I am. And let's go to the next slide here. Here's my portfolio. So why I show my portfolio and why we start talking about this, I want you to get into the real estate investing mindset. And it's buying and holding real estate over the long term. So as I said, there's 15 condos, an apartment building in Hamilton, a triplex in High Park in Toronto. I've been focused on investing in Calgary since 2019. And here's the total value of the portfolio, just over $17 million. But I don't care about what it's worth today because there's mortgages on the property. What the beauty of real estate is when you combine real estate with time, you can build significant wealth. And why I look at things over 30 years is that I know that my mortgage will be paid off in 30 years. So tenants are going to be living in my properties. I'm not paying them off. The tenants are paying off the properties. And over 30 years, all the mortgages will be paid off. And every year that property goes up in value, and it's a compounded annual growth rate. And I calculate my portfolio at a compounded annual growth rate of 3%. So the beauty of compounded money over time is a portfolio worth over $42 million, fully paid off by the lovely tenants that I provide shelter to, and they, in exchange and remuneration, provide me money and pay off my mortgage and cover my expenses. So I don't look at making money in the short term. I look at making money in the long term on my portfolio. Now, Kyle has followed in these footsteps and he's done it. So Kyle, why don't you tell a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Alex. So I'm actually licensed in Ontario and Alberta to trade real estate. I've been investing in real estate since 2012, so just over 10 years now. And I'm an owner and landlord of 6 properties now. And just like Alex, I started with one property. This is how this journey starts. And I've been able to grow that over the last 10 years into a portfolio of 6 different properties. I didn't start in real estate though. I had a different career before this. I was the lottery draws manager for Lotto 649 and Lotto Max before this. But when I was doing that, I found some crazy statistics where 34% of the people in Canada that were polled by BMO in 2014 had said that they planned on winning the lottery in order to fund their retirement. I thought that was a depressing statistic. And I didn't want to, have people gambling on their future. I wanted to start helping people invest in building wealth over time. And I've been very successful in that. Last year alone, I helped over 130 people from across Canada to invest in Calgary real estate.
And why don't you talk about your portfolio? Oh, I guess the next slide, right? We'll go to the next
Yeah,
slide.
it should be.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, exactly. So I started off, Alex and I invested in the same project in 2012 in the Carnaby. I bought a one bed, one bath, and that has significantly grown in value. I've doubled that. But I've been able to leverage the equity in that property to buy multiple ones over the years now and significantly grow my portfolio. So much so that it's actually worth over 4.5 million nowadays. And like Alex said, I've got mortgages on those properties, but the tenants are paying those off in 25 more years, I'm going to have those free and clear. That's my retirement package that I'm looking forward to instead of trying to win the lottery to fund that retirement.
And I'll also add, I've known Kyle since high school, and Kyle is a debt adverse person. Once he understood the value of leverage versus debt, that's the way he moved into action. When he bought that first investment condo, I think it took him 3 weeks of going back and forth. Like, oh, am I going to do this? Am I going to do this? This is crazy. I'm going to get a mortgage. But once you get past the idea of like, wait a second, this isn't a mortgage. I'm leveraging myself. And this is specifically in pre-construction condos. You're not even getting a mortgage at that time. You are just putting money down on a property and securing a price point today to buy at that price in the future. But when you get in your head that, okay, I'm not getting a mortgage, I'm leveraging myself, and that expense of the mortgage or the property tax and the maintenance fee, if you go condo, excuse me, that is then matched by an income stream, which is the rent. And that's the key component of it. So now we've leveraged ourselves, and that's where a down payment on and I'll use the Calgary. Well, I'm going to back it up. When we bought that first condo, it was $262,000. That's what the first condo cost. I can't get that pricing in Toronto anymore, and that's what's led us to Calgary. And when we look at pricing in Calgary, we're dealing with, if we're dealing in suburban areas, 300,000 to 400,000, and if we're in the downtown core, 400,000 to 600,000. And when I say 600,000, that's getting you a 2-bedroom with parking in the 600s. That same price point is a studio in downtown Toronto, just in comparison sake. But where I'm going with this is that if I'm putting down only $60,000 on a 10% deposit, but the value is 600,000, and that $600,000 is going up at 5% per year, but I only have $60,000 in there, that's where you can see really big growth on that initial investment of that $60,000 on that initial down payment. So when you start thinking like that, and that's when Kyle came to the realization of that, it really put him in a high gear. And Kyle, what did you purchase that Carnaby condo for? We put $262,000, and look what it's worth today, $550,000.
Exactly.
And that's a conservative number. Even the Riverside Square one is even the more exciting example. When you bought that one was 350,000 roughly, and today it's worth 650,000. And you bought that one in 2016, and I couldn't buy it. I wanted to buy it, but I couldn't. I just bought a house and I was getting married, so Kyle got that opportunity. And these were before he entered into the real estate world. But the best example, we talk about buying real estate, holding and building your own pension plan. That's when we bring Niesh in, and Niesh has really embraced this in a short period. And he's the classic story of a corporate individual that then realized they needed to build something for their own. And Niesh, I love your story. So Niesh, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. My name is Niesh, as Alex mentioned. I started my real estate journey just 3 years ago. And prior to that, I worked for a company called Percent Corporation, phenomenal company. However, we were hit pretty hard when COVID hit the world, in 2020. And I was in this position, and I wasn't a unique individual in terms of my tenure with this company. Working for 2 decades, you're expecting certain things when you're looking towards retirement, or, if something were to happen, you're expecting a type of severance. However, when COVID hit and we had to shut operations, we kind of lost all of that. Now, thankfully for myself, I had started the transition into real estate before COVID, so I already had an exit strategy. But I was looking at my colleagues, those that were a lot older than I, that were depending on a pension, that were depending on, just something in return from a company, and unfortunately, they were not able to do that. So we're going to talk a little bit more about how I was able to take a situation like that, learn from experts in the field that have done this many times over, and in a short amount of time, I was able to grow my portfolio. The numbers are slightly more than what you see on the screen here, but it isn't something that is unattainable. And we're going to get into that in a moment. And similar to Kyle, we do pre-construction out in Calgary, and my portfolio is right here. You'll notice that 2006 is when I first ventured into home ownership. Again, not from an investment standpoint. That was my initial residence. In 2017, we start to look at, okay, what can we do to grow our portfolio and hopefully benefit down the road with real estate. Now you can see where the trajectory of my investment skyrocketed. And we're one property short because I just purchased one last month in the downtown area. But being able to utilize a low down payment structure, allowing your property to depreciate over 10, 20, 30 years while someone else is paying down your mortgage is the way you're able to build your own pension fund, because many of my coworkers didn't get that. So now being proactive, taking it into our own hands, we're excited to share our journey with you and hopefully bring you on board as well.
Niesh sent me an updated slide, but I don't have time to put it in. Yes, he is Niesh out of the three of us. I have three. I had four. Now I'm down to 3 properties in Calgary. Kyle's at 1, and Niesh, you're now at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Because the seventh one isn't in here. And then Ramin has on our team. He's invested heavily in Calgary, and Nick on our team as well has also invested in Calgary. So everyone on our team has invested in Calgary, and a number of us have multiple, and Niesh is going for double digits. So we really believe in the Calgary market, and what it comes down to is those cash flow fundamentals, and a market that has the ability to grow and go up in value. And we're going to show you those stats in this presentation.
And one quick thing, Alex.
Yeah.
I'm not a wealthy person. I don't come from a wealthy background. I'm an immigrant. It's not like I had what are those things called? A trust fund when I turned 18. This is attainable, and I'm excited to have Alex talk about that a little further in Kyle as well.
Oh yeah. None of us here, and we talk about that in our meetings. None of us here have come from a wealth-based background. I'm from a small town in Northern Ontario, and Kyle's from the big city of Sudbury. And I had to take a bus in for 45 minutes just to get to high school where I met Kyle. But that's the whole key thing, is that anyone can do this. It just takes time and patience. Real estate is a long, boring game, but if you play it, you can build that significant wealth. And we've been sharing this message about Calgary in 2022. We helped over 350 people from across Canada invest in Calgary and sold over 150 million in pre-construction units. And our team has personally invested in 10 pre-construction units. And I just doing the math now, Niesh, that's just you and I. We're at 11. So now Ramin's got a few, and then Kyle, and yeah, we're probably getting closer to 15 now. So I'll have to upgrade that slide as well. We continue to invest in Calgary because it just makes sense. And this is where we talk about pension plans. And let's say, for example, you don't have the down payment, but you do own your own home. You can use your home to create a pension fund. And it allows you to keep your home in retirement. So I read in the newspaper where they talk about people that are in their 70s and their 80s and living in basement apartments, but you read the whole story about them, and they used to own a home, but they sold it, and they sold it maybe 10 years ago or 15 years ago, and they've exhausted their retirement funds. Rents are through the roof, and now they're just one step from ending up on the streets. And it's like, well, how did that happen? and you think I make the right decisions. My company's going to take care of me. I'm going to get this company pension. And if I pay off my house, that's good. And all those things are fine, but companies go bankrupt and those pensions are not secured. And you may have a family situation hit you. Let's say, for example, you're married and your husband was the primary income earner, and something happened, or vice versa, and something happened, and yeah, you paid off the house, but then you need to cash in on the house just to live, and then all of a sudden your life expectancy exceeds your ability to fund it. And the thing is, and I'll go back to Niesh's example, and I spent so much time talking about this before we get to the whole why invest in Calgary, because I need everyone in the mindset to see why this is so important. You know, Niesh had a fundamentally life-altering, career-changing thing happen with COVID, but Niesh was late 30s, early 40s at that point. He had the ability to recover, pivot, and he was already down the road into doing real estate. But when this happens to you when you're in your 50s, 60s, and 70s, you know, and 60s, 70s, you can't really pivot. You know, you're past your prime income earning years, and you just may not physically be able to go back into the workforce. So what are you supposed to do? Now, if you paid off your home, or your home's gone up in significant in value, you could sell it to tap into that equity, but then you got to move somewhere else. So there's transactional costs. That doesn't make sense unless you go to a lower cost environment. Or if you take out a home equity line of credit on the property and use those funds to invest in another property, that's how you can grow things. And that's one of the ways that I grew my portfolio significantly over a 10-year period from 2012 to 2022, was refinancing. I did it through refinancing investment properties that I previously invested in, and used home equity line of credits for my principal residence to do that. That's how I came up with the funds. And the key thing is, you know, it's nice to have one property going up in value, which is your house that you live in. But if you have two properties going up in value, that's great. If you have three properties going up in value, that's even better. And 4, 5, 6, 7. And that's when you really start building that significant wealth over the long run. Because remember, those tenants are paying down the property. And each $350,000 condo represents over $24,000 in annual income in your retirement years. And that's at present in your purchasing power today. And I want to show everyone that. So, you know, we see it. I'm at 17 million. Kyle, you are at 4.5 million. Niesh, you're over 10 million now. And if we look at these numbers, a $1 million portfolio will give you a $70,000 in today's purchasing power, a $70,000 payout in 30 years. And how I calculate that is I take $1 million, I compound that annually at 3%. I adjust it for inflation so we get today's purchasing power. And then if I just apply a conservative 5% annual rate of return on that 1.4 million, which is adjusted for today's purchasing power, I get a $70,000 payout. Now my team hates when I get into the slide and talk so much, because sometimes they say I get too deep into the numbers and everything. Oh, yeah, there's Kyle making fun of me. But my background's in economics and finance. So, and I just stress the importance of this. If you just do these simple things, buy and hold real estate, you will be in fantastic position when you retire, because the properties, the math takes care of itself. Is that better, Kyle? Did you say the math takes care of itself?
Much. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So if you buy a $1 million, if you have a $1 million portfolio, or a $2 million portfolio, or $3 million portfolio, these are all achievable things that anyone here can do. You just start with one, and then it starts growing one after another, and it's not hard to do. And actually, I'm not going into that right now, because I adjusted the slides. I want to talk to everyone about why buy in Calgary. Then I'm going to talk about our current investment opportunities. So why buy Calgary? This is the journey that I went on. It's the journey that Kyle went on. This is the journey that Niesh went on, Ramin went on, Nick went on. I've seen all these individuals start going on this journey at various points. I remember when we first started selling Calgary, Kyle's like, "You're crazy. I'm never buying in Calgary." And I think a year later, you bought in Calgary.
Correct. Because it was after seeing the opportunity. It's like, I don't know how I can't do this. I know I will regret it if I don't.
Yeah, and I will say Kyle started the journey early, and when we started promoting Calgary, which was in 2019, there were a lot of people that were saying Calgary is gone, it's over, forget about it. So there were a lot of negativity, there are a lot of things you had to get over at that point. But when you start looking into why Calgary makes sense, that's what we started doing. So first of all, Calgary, most livable city in North America for 2 consecutive years, most livable city in the world, fourth most livable city in the world, sorry, for stability, healthcare, culture, education, infrastructure, top 5 of the Economist Intelligence Unit's Global Livability Index, located in the foothills of the Canadian Rockies, loads of green space, and the second lowest cost of living of Canadian cities and 9th lowest in North America. The most important point in this presentation, this one and the population growth, I think are the two most important points. Because what are we lacking right now? Affordability. We all live in Toronto on here. And we have investors from across Canada. Vancouver lacks affordability. Montreal lacks affordability. And we have investors from all those markets, and they're all focusing in on Calgary because it doesn't lack affordability. It has affordability. And when you have affordability, you have room to grow in the prices. And it's sunny there. It's the sunniest city in Canada with an average of 2,300 sun-filled hours a year and the most extensive outdoor pathway network. You can go enjoy the outdoors and rank the second for healthiest lifestyle. So it seems like a pretty great place to live if I just wanted to live there. And then outside of it, I got the Rocky Mountains, which is world-renowned, with 5 world-class ski resorts, only 2 hours away, over 200 biking trails in Banff National Park, and it's only an hour and a half to actually get to Banff. And again, people from around the world travel here, and that's a real 1.5 hours. It's not like a fake 1.5 hours to get me to Muskoka, but to do that, I have to leave at 2 in the morning. Heck, I was in Markham today, and it took me an hour each way to get there. You don't have those issues in Calgary. You can actually get to Banff at any point in 1.5 hours. So why are Alex, Kyle, Niesh, Ramin, Nick investing in Calgary? So we talked about, it sounds like a great place to live, but you need more than that. We are in the business of investing in roofs over heads. So we're investing in roofs. That means we need the heads to be moving there. So we look for areas where there's going to be population growth. And if I look to the past, Calgary has had that positive population growth, 44,000 people in 2020, 34,000 in 2021, 29,000 in 2022. So it was a metropolitan center that was actually growing through COVID. Toronto was losing people during COVID. Calgary, a metropolitan center, was growing. They also have money. Calgary has the highest millionaires per capita of all major Canadian cities. And Calgary represents the highest wage and salaries per employee in the country at over $66,000. So yeah, it's affordable and people make money there. But this is where things start getting really crazy. And I get excited, and Kyle gets excited, Niesh gets excited, Remy and Nick, and you all should get excited too. The population growth in Alberta is going to lead the country over the next 20 years. So you read in the paper about record levels of immigration. We were bringing 500,000 people into Canada a year. And by the way, we have to do this. If you follow demographics, we don't have a replacement birth rate in Canada. So in order to sustain population growth, we actually need to bring these individuals in. And with the baby boomer generation retiring, you need that skilled labor workforce coming in. And where are all these people going to live when they come in? Well, you have Toronto, you have Vancouver, and they're always going to get their people. But this is where that second most affordable city in Canada really comes into play. And the fact they have high wages really starts to come into play. So Alberta is set to increase by 48% and will be larger than British Columbia by 2043. So in 20 years, Ontario is only going to grow by 24%. Now, Calgary being the population and economic capital of Alberta, the population of Calgary is going to outpace the growth of Alberta. The population of Calgary over that time period is going to grow by 62.5% over that next 20 years. It's going to grow by 1 million people. It's going to go from 1.6 million people to 2.6 million people. So where are all those people going to live? All those people are going to require roofs over heads. So if I'm investing in the city that's going to grow by the fastest rate, where do I want to invest? I want to invest in the city that's going to grow by the fastest rate in Canada over the next 20 years. That makes the most money in Canada. That's where I want to invest. And Kyle, why don't you talk about the migration that happened quickly over COVID and just how we're already seeing that vast population change happen.
Yeah, and Calgary had actually been seeing, people leaving the city, and like especially Alberta, people going to Ontario. But over the last couple of years, that is now completely reversed, especially the last 3 quarters. You can see in the chart on the left, massive spike of people returning to the province, the most number of people ever. And one of the quarters, the most recent quarter is not shown on here as well. It dipped a little bit from the peak, but it was still a record overall. So the last 3 quarters have been the highest number of people moving to Alberta ever. So massive numbers of people. Majority of those people are coming from international migration, almost a little over 2/3 of them, but also interprovincial migration, mainly people from Ontario now seemingly returning back to Alberta. And I'm really seeing this firsthand. Normally I always spoke to just investors, but now I'm probably approaching 15% of people that are considering moving to Calgary themselves because great remote work possibilities. And like Alex had mentioned before, incredible affordability for real estate. So you're really seeing this happen. Alberta growing and from international and interprovincial sources.
And the economy is strong there as well. So we look at the population growth, that's one factor, but then we want to make sure the people that are there actually have money. And you look at the economic capitals of Canada, Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, 4th largest is Calgary. So they have the money there. And the economic output of Calgary, it's larger than the economic output of Saskatchewan. It's larger than the economic output of Manitoba. It's larger than provinces. It is a powerhouse. And it's going to lead, so we showed it's going to lead by population growth. It's going to also lead in economic growth. So don't I want to invest there? I'm roofs over heads, and they're the most economically, they're growing at the fastest rate from their economy, and they're punching above their weight in regards to jobs added. So yes, Ontario added more jobs than Alberta, but Alberta is also smaller. So when you actually look at the proportion of the population versus the number of jobs added in Alberta, it's punching way above its weight, and it's adding the most jobs per capita in Canada out of all the provinces. So fastest job growth, fastest population growth, fastest economic growth, highest salaries in Canada. That means there's significant room for the values of real estate to go up in Calgary. And guess what? They run budget surpluses. What government does that in Canada anymore? I don't know any of them, but Alberta does. And that's the benefit of their oil and gas sector. And now we're going to talk about it more a little bit later on. But one of the biggest negativities that we would get when we started talking about Calgary in 2019, it's like, oh, it's oil and gas to oil and gas, and the oil and gas is over. We didn't start investing in Calgary because of oil and gas. We're investing in Calgary because of its diversified economy, which we're going to talk about how it's significantly diversified its way away from oil and gas. Oil and gas is just now a backbone to the economy. Kyle and I are originally from Sudbury, which is the mining, one of the mining capital. I want to say it's a mining capital of Canada. I don't actually know it is. It feels like it is though. Nickel was the nickel capital of the world. But anyways, what happened through our lifetime when we were growing up, the economic stability of Sudbury was based on the price of nickel, or labor actions in the unions. So if there were strikes or the price of nickel went down, then the entire economy of Sudbury crashed. But they diversified away from that, investing in other sectors, to the point where there was a major strike action about a decade ago in Sudbury, and it had no impact on the local economy because it diversified away from relying on strictly the price of nickel to drive their economy. The same thing has happened to Calgary. So these surpluses are great. This helps the province continue to pay down net provincial debt, which is what they're doing. They're in a $13 billion surplus. They pay down their net financial debt. And you're going to say that I'm going to show you later how they're even in a great net financial debt situation anyways, compared to the other provinces. But Alberta has money and they've already diversified their economy. And one of the big things I get, we talked about like, oh, oil and gas. Well, people maybe it's like, well, what happens when oil and gas prices go down again? Alex, you're showing me $13 billion surpluses. What if oil and gas prices go down again? Which, by the way, they're probably not, but that's a whole nother presentation I can do. But let's say they do go down. Well, guess what? All those jobs that are being created in Alberta have nothing to do with oil and gas. They're all diversified economic jobs. They're diversified away from oil and gas. No new jobs were created in oil and gas during this boom time right now. There's no new investments that are happening in oil sands. They're not building new oil sands projects. They may be increasing the efficiencies of the current projects, but there's no massive investments into the oil sands. So all these new jobs are all jobs in other areas. And the key thing is that you can't lay off people that are already laid off. So if oil and gas prices go down, there won't be any layoffs because they already laid off those people when oil prices were significantly lower. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Oh, there's my net financial debt slide. I love this slide. So we talk about how Alberta is paying down their debt with their surpluses they're running with the oil and gas prices right now. But they were already in the best financial situation in Canada, where they're running a net financial debt of $2,500. Now, this slide's a little bit older, so it's 2017. This net financial debt had gone up because of COVID, but they're paying that number back down now. And just put it in perspective, right now their net financial debt before the most recent pay downs was hovering around 10,000 per person. Ontario shot up to over 30,000 per person, just to put that in perspective. So Alberta running the lowest net financial debt per individual in the country. And why is that relevant? Well, that they can do things like not have a provincial sales tax, have the lowest corporate tax rates in Canada, offer incentives for corporations to come to their province and open up businesses. They're in a great financial situation to do these various things, and that's because they're fiscally prudent in what they do. And we'll talk more about that as well. So buy low, sell high. You know, that's the opportunity that we saw in 2019 and we continue to see today. New condo prices, sale prices dropped 21% since 2017. Now those have recovered, but condo prices have not even reached record highs set in 2014, almost 10 years ago. And why was that? Well, oil crashed, and there were mass layoffs in the oil and gas industry that followed that. And when it was the economy of Calgary relied mainly on oil and gas, and people were losing their jobs left, right, and center, that had an impact on the value of real estate in the city. And then there was a lag effect because real estate prices had gone down so much and people were underwater on their properties. And there's just a lot of negativity around there. So people were really scared of the real estate market in Calgary. But the problem it went down too much and it stayed down for too long. So when other markets in Canada were going up in value, Toronto doubling, tripling, Vancouver doubling, tripling, Calgary was going down, and just staying down there. And people were just ignoring Calgary. It didn't make sense, but it was just because you had this lag effect in regards to like, oh, there's oil and gas in Calgary, and oil and gas is over. And that means Calgary is over. But what they were doing is they were diversifying their economy during that time. So what we're doing now is we're still buying low. If you look at the fundamentals, I got positive cash flow. I have highest population growth in Canada, highest economic growth in Canada. And again, going back to the population growth, my population grew by 62.5%. These stats are Stats Canada stats, not Alex, Kyle, and Niesh, and Ramin, Nick looking online going, let's find the most favorable stat. No, this is the federal government, Stats Canada, projecting these numbers. Nothing made up. These are the numbers that are coming out there. It's just facts, just facts. So when I have all these growth numbers, it just makes sense when I apply real estate fundamentals to invest in that market. And oil, when we talk about oil and gas, and this, I'm not relying on oil and gas in Calgary to propel the economy, but I do have positive news in oil and gas beyond the conflict in Ukraine, which is pushing up oil prices. But the issue with oil and gas in Alberta is that it's landlocked. So my largest customer and that buys nearly 70 to 80% of the oil is actually the United States, because I only have pipelines going there. But when we open up the new Trans Mountain pipeline, that is going to increase our exports by 13%, and those exports are going to the international markets, and that is going to be a big boom to the oil and gas economy, because that allows us to diversify our customer base. And that's when we have shocks to the system, our oil, who we sell to one customer predominantly, is going to be more protected on prices. So for example, in 2020, Alberta oil was selling at 50% less than Texas oil because the United States didn't need the oil. So that we had to sell it at a severe discount or a significant discount just to sell the oil. But when we diversify our customer base with the Trans Mountain pipeline, which is competing 2023, 2024, which as Canadians we own, that is going to help our oil exports. And that helps not only Alberta economy, but the Canadian economy as well. But this is why we started investing, other than buy low, the diversification away from oil and gas. So Kyle, why don't you talk more about this?
Yeah, and 30 years ago, Alex had mentioned the economy very heavily dependent on oil and gas. Now you're seeing that diversify heavily away into fields like real estate, finance. But technology is what gets me really excited, where you're starting to see a lot of startups coming out of Calgary and getting that sort of incubator environment up and running, which is very important when you keep hearing about AI, ChatGPT, all these sorts of AI functionality. That is going to be the future. And it's these sorts of tech companies that are going to be driving that moving forward. And this is where Calgary really excels. It's been globally rated as one of the top cities for workers. And it's a very heavily educated workforce. And this has been cited time and time again by companies of why they've chosen to set up shop in Calgary and expand operations there, because they have science, technology, engineering, mathematics. This is everything that you need for those technology fields, whether it's AI, green initiatives, efficiencies, these sorts of technologies and education is what's really going to be driving these companies moving forward. And you're really seeing that happening in Calgary. 435 tech companies, 3/4 of these are startups. And it's being driven a lot because of the low-cost office space. This is a legacy from 2015 when oil crashed and there was significant consolidation and oil and gas companies going out of business. There's still a glut of office space downtown. There's about 28, 29% office vacancy. They're starting to convert some of those buildings actually into residential, starting to revitalize the downtown core. But these tech startups and other companies are moving their operations to Calgary because of the incredible affordable real estate there. Downtown Calgary, it's averaging about $17.50 a square foot. When you compare that to other major cities like Toronto, it's $35 a square foot, 100% more. Calgary is even more expensive, pushing over 150% more. So when you're starting up, you're bootstrapping a lot of the time. You don't have a ton of cash to be investing in your office space. You want to be putting that into your products, reinvesting in your business. And Calgary is really the best city in Canada to be doing this. And you're seeing the results now. 3/4 of those were startups. Eventually, those grow up, and you're seeing unicorns, billion-dollar valuation companies coming out of Calgary. Neo Financial. I've seen stalls now in the mall by my house where they're trying to grow and expand. Morgan Stanley bought ShareWorks, Benevity Financial, Parvis Therapeutics. These are significant companies. And, Alex has said this many times before, when these people reach that sort of status, the owners and founders, they've got money then. They're going to start reinvesting in their friends' companies, in the other startups. And then that becomes cyclical. It's like a snowball effect More money continues to be poured into the Calgary tech scene, which brings in more money, venture capital. You're seeing record amounts pouring into Calgary. But then not just startups, you have established companies. Amazon, everyone's heard about that. They're opening a new cloud computing hub in Calgary. They announced this probably about a year and a half ago. This is only the second one in Canada. There's only one other one in Montreal. This is over a $4 billion investment, and it's going to be bringing about 1,000 additional jobs in addition to their warehouse and distribution services they already have in Calgary. These are going to be high-paying IT tech jobs into the city. TELUS, they went about as big as you could. They built a 60-story headquarters in downtown Calgary, the TELUS Sky. This is incredible. They're hiring about 8,500 people in Alberta. This is a $17 billion investment in the province. You know, they're going all in on Alberta, and Calgary is going to benefit significantly from this. WestJet, they made Calgary its global connecting hub for all of its flights. This is going to be a multi-billion-dollar investment in the Calgary area and the airport. They're relocating all of their big Dreamliners to Calgary as well. And this is going to be adding about 1,000 direct jobs into the city and into the economy. But then you also have other companies, you know, de Havilland. I'd never heard about these guys before, but they're actually an aircraft manufacturing company. They don't build the Dreamliners that WestJet is using. They're using more water bombers, work planes, and they have a significant aircraft manufacturing facility at Downsview Park in Toronto right now. They're moving that entire operation from Toronto to just outside of Calgary, to just outside East Calgary. This is going to be bringing over 1,500 jobs. This is a 1,500-acre development, a brand new airstrip, manufacturing facilities. There's even going to be a museum there, training. You know, so this is not even new. This is relocating people there, well-paying jobs. So not directly related to IT, but manufacturing. This is where Calgary is like booming. It's firing on all cylinders right now. And then again, these are just other companies that have continued to announce either they're setting up operations or expanding their operations. Infosys, IT company. Emphasis, again, another IT company adding, you know, thousands of jobs. And then SideTrade, you get into the smaller sorts of companies that you've probably never heard of, but 110 jobs. That's, you know, a medium-sized business. This is nothing to sneeze at. And they're opening new headquarters in downtown Calgary. And this is the trend that you're seeing time and time again. You see it in Toronto, you see it in Vancouver, but not many other cities where you have companies like this setting up operations specifically in cities. And you know, you're seeing constantly headlines like this. And then you have the well-established companies, you know, TD Bank, they set up a wealth innovation center where they're training all of their financial planners in Western Canada. RBC, they opened an innovation hub, going to be adding, or they did add about 300 jobs downtown Calgary, and they specifically reference the highly educated workforce that they can bring these sorts of IT jobs and have a huge pool of resources that they can use. IBM as well opened a business innovation hub. This is very close to a previous project gallery and one that we currently have available, Imperia. You know, this is walking distance to this innovation hub. 250 jobs directly there, but also lots of other offshoot industries that benefit from these anchor sort of tenants and companies and businesses in the downtown core and throughout Calgary.
So how do we know this is going to continue? How can we be confident about this? It's because I've already seen it happen. We've all seen it happen, and we've seen it happen in the US. And we're kind of a mini, what happens in the US ends up happening in Canada, essentially. So what you had is you had companies leaving a high cost environment like California and relocating to Texas. Well, why are they doing that? So when we put our case study hat on, well, they're fleeing high taxes. Well, if we apply that to Canada, Alberta has the lowest corporate tax rate in Canada, no land transfer tax or development charges. So if you're buying real estate in Alberta or Calgary, there's no taxes. Your closing costs are zero. There's no extra costs. And there's no provincial sales tax as well, another extra savings for anyone that's doing business in Alberta. Expensive housing. This is where people are leaving California, companies are leaving California because their employees can't afford to live there, or they have to pay them more so that their employees can afford to live there. Well, again, if we apply that to Canada, Calgary has the second lowest cost of living in Canada, ninth lowest cost in North America. You know, when you compare that to Vancouver and Toronto specifically, the cost of living is significantly better, where our cities are considered unaffordable. Calgary is considered affordable. So that means that employees can have a higher standard of living. That means they're happier. That means they're more productive. So you have a more productive employee operating out of Calgary. And you have limited red tape in Alberta. It's a pro-business environment. And the government regulations, they're all about investing back into businesses because they have that pro-investment mindset. When COVID kicked in, they had a $10 billion stimulus package. Of that, 175 million committed to the Alberta Enterprise for Innovation. There's no rent control. So if you're a landlord there, it is one of the best provinces to be a landlord in. When I compare it to Ontario, where I'm a landlord, and a number of my properties are in Ontario, and if you do the right things, you'll be okay. But in Ontario, if my tenant stops paying me, it's going to take a year. It's going to take a year for me to get that tenant out. In Alberta, it takes about 2 to 3 weeks. Imagine having a property and with a big mortgage, maintenance fees, property taxes, you could be running, like $40,000 to $50,000 worth of expenses, and your tenant isn't paying you, and you can't do anything about it. That can be a significant stress for you and can cause serious economic harm to your well-being. Well, I don't have to worry about that in Alberta. I'll get the person in 2 to 3 weeks. Rent. I have rent control in Ontario. There's no rent control in Alberta. There's also fixed term leases in Alberta, meaning that I can tell a tenant to leave whenever I want, after their lease is done. I can increase the amount to whatever I want when the leases come to its completion. These are things that I can do there that I can't do in Ontario. And again, that is a stress on investors in Ontario, a stress that doesn't exist in Alberta. So it's that pro-investment policy, no rent control, no foreign buyer tax, no land transfer tax, no provincial sales tax, no development charges, $10 billion stimulus package, including reducing corporate taxes. Now, but again, we got a few more slides still to do, but I just wanted to add to anyone, if you have any questions, you can just ask them in the Q&A box, so there will be a Q&A portion after this. So the Calgary market, Niesh, I want you to talk a little bit more about the Calgary market. Why don't you get into these stats, just talking about, how great the Calgary market is just even today in this transitioning market that we're in.
Yeah, happy to do that. What I would love to do is I want to tie 2 points that both you and Kyle made
of course.
A few slides ago. When Kyle was going through some of the new businesses that were investing in Calgary and bringing all these jobs, I was trying to do the math. There's tens of thousands of jobs. Yes, granted, some of those jobs are going to go to people that are already in Calgary, people that live there that might be looking for a career change, or those that are old enough to now get into the workforce. But a good majority or a good portion of those jobs will need to bring people from outside the city, whether it's migration from other provinces in Canada or immigration from other places that have the skilled laborers, those that are in the STEM fields, in the financial services, and in healthcare. They need to come. They need places to live. And just as Alex said, we are in the business of investing in roofs over heads, and there are a lot of roofs that need to be made. And the population is just going to continue to grow. So that is really how those two things are connected. And the other piece we were looking at were the reasons why Calgary or Alberta, they're able to do things like not charge land transfer taxes or have the high corporate taxes. It's because of the point Alex made earlier. It's a surplus. They have expanded their economy to include things separate from oil, even though oil is the background. The STEM fields, the high-tech sector, again, the financial services, all these things are bringing money into the city. And as a result, they're able to pass some of the savings on to people like us who are trying to invest there. We don't have to pay all those fees. So just wanted to wrap that up, but I'll get into the slide that Alex wants me to chat about. So the market report for May, this is fresh off the presses. we're looking at an increase, like a year-over-year increase of over 2% compared to last year. Now, if you were to compare that to other major cities, there's probably going to be a negative sign there, right? So you want to look at this number closely. Even in a depressed market, Calgary has been outperforming even our expectations in the trajectory that it's been going. And the townhouse sector, which is a little bit more affordable, has gone up 8.5%. Again, if you want to do the research, compare what the prices look like here in Toronto, in Vancouver, in Montreal, it won't be these numbers. And condo prices, which tend to be where we see the biggest increase in Calgary, nearly 10% year over year, right? And we remember what happened in the latter part of 2022. Everything tanked here. Whereas in Calgary, yeah, they did slow down a little bit because people were hesitant, but then the trajectory of their appreciation continued to go up. And the last point here, Alex, what are we looking at here?
Rent.
Wow.
Rent.
Wow. Yes, rent. So in 2022, this is a slide that I remember Kyle talked about in the previous webinar. In 2022, rents went up almost 30%. So I'm using that as the foundation for this next point. So far, year over year, as of, I guess, as early as this month, it's gone up by another 25%. That's on top of a stellar year in 2022. So we're seeing the population growth, the lack of housing, the demand to live in a place like Calgary shoot through the roof. And that is what's causing the rental price increases.
And I want to add on this slide here, and our team member Nick found this slide. It just shows, and Niesh talked about it, and the fact that we're positive year over year, where most other Canadian cities are negative. And that's where you're seeing in this slide here, where the peak of prices to the lowest to the current market, where we had markets like, let's say, Kitchener. Kitchener went up 70 to 80% during COVID, but then last year they gave back 13%. So if you bought in February at the peak and then sold, you'd be in a negative situation right now. It's where we're seeing a lot of these markets are negative right now if you're comparing to if they bought in the last couple of years. Whereas Calgary, they're not in that situation. They're not giving up any of their gains, and they're continuing to increase in prices now. And this is a slide talking about the rents, how they've been going up. So we've been seeing nearly a 30% increase in rents in Calgary over year over year. Now getting into our current opportunities that we have, and we can definitely get into deeper conversations about those in the Q&A, or people can book calls with us. Niesh, why don't you talk about Horizon and Hazelwood?
Yeah. So also one other point I want to make, and I think it's connected to this. So I have a tenant coming up for their annual end of lease in June. This is the first townhouse that I purchased. The market rates right now are about almost $400 more per month than what they're paying. And I had the conversation with them just a couple of days ago, and they're okay increasing the rent because they're being paid well. So that's just to give you a real life example of what we're showing here, how that's actually resulting in every day.
So I'm going to ask a real live question because I don't know the answer to this. So Niesh, you're going from 2250 to 2650?
Well, it was 2450 because I was able to do a bit of a negotiation with them. But I did take on the utilities, right? So now they're going to keep the 20, they're going to go to 2400, but they're going to be paying all the utilities. So that comes up to about almost $2,800 a month.
Nice. Amazing. Awesome. Yeah. Great. So congratulations.
Good for me. Yeah. I mean, I got my mortgage in August, so things weren't really that great in terms of interest rates. So it's really good.
And leading it out, your townhomes in the Northeast, this new project's in the East. And what's key about this project, if you were to look in there's not much in the area right now. If I go to the south, there's the Rio Cam Plaza, which has a lot, but this area is booming in the for residential construction right now, and this is the closest community in Calgary to the new de Havilland aircraft manufacturing facility, which is being built just east of Calgary. So if you wanted to live in Calgary and be close to work, this is the closest place for you to live than to commute to the new de Havilland facility, which is going to create 1,500 jobs. But you got to understand, it's a relocation. So that means 1,500 people are going to be relocating from Toronto and then moving to Calgary, and they will all need roofs over their heads. So it's not a situation where they're going to get workers from Calgary. No, you're going to have people moving from Toronto, the skilled labor from Toronto, and then relocating to Calgary to work at this aircraft manufacturing facility, because they're moving the whole facility from here to there. Where are they going to live? And that facility is completing in 2024, 2025, which is in line just shortly after this, which the Horizon's completing in 2027. So we still have a few units left here. What actually, Kyle, you just told me there's only 8 left, right?
8 that are not on the ground floor.
8 on the okay, no 8 on, and there's some ground floor, and then
there's still some ground floor units.
Yeah, all right, cool.
And to be honest, the ground floor units, people like them. Like I've had success with them because of the accessibility to get to the units on the ground floor versus taking elevators. So there is still demand for it. I think we just need to highlight that.
Yeah, and the 3 bedrooms have a 30-foot balcony for those Horizon units. That's insane. It's about 7 feet wide, so it's over 200 square feet. Like that's just massive outdoor space.
That's a studio condo in Toronto.
Seriously.
And then we have it just launched just this week, Imperia, which is a brand new tower in downtown Calgary. Stunning exoskeleton of the building, and because it's downtown, you're gonna be more expensive there. So the Horizon building, what are units there right now, Kyle? Around 350 to 4, running there.
360, including parking and locker, is what the 2-bed, 2-bath start at. The 3 beds are 410 with 2 parking spaces and a locker.
And then we have Imperia, which is downtown, to more expensive. Your 1 bedrooms there are going to be starting in the mid to high 4s, no parking. Then getting into your 2-bedroom units, which will be in your 5s, mid 5s, plus 25K for parking. Then you get into your large presidential corner units. Those there are in the 6s plus 25K for parking. This closing in 2028, and this building here, this is close to all the high paying IT jobs. This is close to that IBM technology campus that we were talking about. All your high tech, high paying jobs, 6-figure jobs, are all walking distance from the new Imperial building. 10% down, so again, anywhere between just under, you'd be somewhere between 45 to 50,000, all the way up to about 65,000. So minimal capital commitment on this project. And if I'm looking at Horizon, my capital commitment there will be around $35 to $45,000. So you have a suburban option or you have a downtown option. Incredible pricing. Again, if this was in Toronto, this building, my pricing here for my most expensive unit is a studio unit compared to in Toronto with no parking. So we have those, and we'll send you more details on both these projects. We have recorded this, so you will get a recording of this, and all those projects will be in there. It'll be an opportunity to book a call with one of the wealth builders. So what